right? And every time you have a thought and every time you make a big choice in your life, you create another world. You create another reality, another timeline for yourself. You create another option, even if you don't choose it and go down it. Because you had the thought, you actually create that simultaneously.
Hello, my loves. This is Johanna Burkhardt. I am a multidimensional channel, teacher, healer, and author. And I am obsessed with all things metaphysical, esoteric, galactic, and of course, the healing journey. And I'm here to share my stories, my wisdom, and my teachings about being human in the illusion that we call reality. Welcome to Cosmic Blonde.
Hello, my loves. Well, I have been going down some deep rabbit holes and studying and learning and listening to interviews. I am also currently mentoring with somebody and really trying to understand better parallel lives and how to maneuver in between them. If you have been with me long enough, you know that I always say that parallel lives, future lives, past lives, it's all happening right now. It's all happening simultaneously. Us humans give it these labels to make things easier for our brain to understand. So I may use some of those terms interchangeably just because it does make it easier to comprehend on a human level. It simplifies things. But I have been immersed in this and really been noticing, as I've talked about in previous episodes, the more the frequency increases on the planet, the more I become aware of my infinite potentials, the more I become aware of the different versions of myself that simultaneously exist. And I want to be able to move between these realities and choose for myself the reality that I want to live and be on. And I needed to sharpen some skills and make it easier for myself to move between these timelines, to choose the path and make sure that I'm always on the highest potential path, right? Because that's what our higher self is and our oversoul is doing, right? They're acting like a GPS system using the blueprint that our oversoul created for us. And we have so many infinite possibilities, right? And every time you have a thought and every time you make a big choice in your life, you create another world. You create another reality, another timeline for yourself. You create another option. Even if you don't choose it and go down it, that thought, the thought that because you had the thought, you actually create that simultaneously. And so it exists. And this can where we can get into some paradoxes and some things that can cause us to feel chaotic or psychotic, right? It can go into psychosis when we start perceiving these potential timelines and these possibilities of what could have been. And we can get stuck in that because we know that we can't change it because what's done is done. We can see and use the example of like the movie Back to the Future, right? He went back and he made changes, which changed his future. But here's what really happens when you do that. You're not changing the future that you are in right now. You are just creating an alternate reality. You're just creating an alternate timeline where that thing didn't happen or where you made a different choice. But the one where you made that choice, where the thing did happen, that timeline still exists. If you shift, you're just not on it anymore, right? You're on a different frequency. And so, in a way, both things exist, right? You did make a change that did change the future, but it's not that you changed the future. You went to a different parallel reality. You went to another space and time. And so, this is where we can get caught up when we start to sense those things and feel those things. It can oftentimes make people feel like they're going crazy or put you in psychosis. And so understanding how to navigate parallel timelines and how navigating your life choices, right? Managing your energy, learning how to become more observant, self-aware. Like when you learn the foundations, and this is why I'm such a big proponent of preaching about this, because the foundations are something that everybody should learn, right? Those foundations are knowing how your energy operates, knowing how to manage your energy, how to read your energy, how to discern your energy from somebody else's, which can cultivate trust and confidence in yourself and your decision making that will help you moving forward so that you're not somebody who's in constant worry or fear of uncertainty. You're not someone who's constantly procrastinating. You're not someone that deals in fear, right? You deal in infinite potential and possibility. And this is nothing that I think anybody fully masters in this life. I'm sure there are people who have, but the majority don't. It's a practice for a reason. We do this and practice this over a multitude of timelines and lifetimes that are happening all simultaneously in an effort to evolve our soul, right? And so it's important to speak that as well. But for me, part of this in diving into this, I actually have been feeling more into a timeline where I was able to save my father. And it's only been a few weeks where I've had this heavy guilt rising up inside of me that made me feel like I messed up. I made the wrong choice. Because if you read my book or heard the story, you'll know it well. But in 2013, my grandmother died. She was like a mother to me. My mom left when I was 3, so she was the mother figure in my life. She taught me how to cook. She taught me how to sew. She was a confidant. She was a role model. She was one of my favorite people. And she died 2 months after I left San Diego. And I know and have known for a very long time that when I chose myself in that moment, even though I don't think I necessarily made the best choice for myself, it was a fast track in my opinion, because I took a more challenging road that made me evolve much faster. But when I made the choice to move cross country and to leave my grandmother and my father, I broke those soul contracts. I said I was complete. I wasn't going to enable my father anymore. I wasn't going to enable my grandmother. I did not want to feel like they were anchors in my life anymore. And I was starting to feel that way, even though these are the 2 people that I loved the most. And I know who loved me the most. And that I hate every day that I don't live with them in physical form, because they are such amazing people and they literally changed the life of everybody they met or encountered them or who met them. They made an impression, and a life-changing one at that. So 2 months after I moved, my grandmother was at the end stages of cancer that nobody knew she had. And I had to come home, back home and, settle her estate and all of those things. I was the executor. Anyway, fast forward 6 months after she dies, she came to me in apparition form in the middle of the night. It felt like a rope was tied to my heart and I was pulled straight up like a board out of my bed. And she was standing there hovering at the end of my bed in a dress. And she looked beautiful and healthy and happy. And telepathically, she told me that my father was sick and that he was essentially dying. And they don't do that. They don't come and warn you. And I'm going to get a little emotional and I have chills, but they don't warn you if there's not something you can do about it. And back then I was in such fear because I had only been on my awakening journey for a couple of years. I was still in the very early stages of just changing my beliefs, not really knowing who I was anymore. I was a believer in metaphysics and spirituality and these things because I had so many experiences as a child, but this was something new for me, and anything like that hadn't happened in a long time. And I told my husband, who pretty much thought I was crazy anyway at the time, my dad, I had this fear if I told him he would think I was crazy. And I don't know if it would have changed anything, but I also think I didn't necessarily have to tell him. I could have just gone home. And what makes it worse is months into me moving, I knew I had made the wrong decision. I had an inner knowing that I had made the wrong decision. And I was literally given an opportunity when my grandmother died. I could have just turned around and said, I have to come back home. And then stayed with my dad and had been an influence to potentially get him on a liver donor list, the transplant list. And so this has been coming up for me the last couple of weeks. And while it hasn't taken me down, it's been really heavy to sit with. And I needed to sit with it because that guilt's coming up for a reason, right? It's coming up for me to heal it and to forgive myself because there's nothing I can do now. Going back and changing that past is only going to put me on a different reality. And to be honest, I don't know if that's the reality that I want to be on. And I haven't even fully tuned into that reality yet because I don't know if I'm ready to fully see that. And I will get there. And me doing all of this work on myself and learning how to navigate my parallel realities is for me, is for me to live my highest potential. And it will be something that I will teach. I will be putting out a course this year, a live course, something that will hopefully be run live multiple times to help people do this and start to take more control of their life and to feel more empowered, right? This is psychic empowerment, learning how to manipulate the energy and your path, because that's what it is, right? We have infinite possibilities. This is an infinite game that feels real as fuck. And you are the controller of your character. You're not always in control of the game because the game is a co-creation. And you're not always in control of the cards that you are dealt or the thing that's placed in front of you. But you are in control of how your character plays that game, how they react, how they respond, how they dress, how they move, how they create, what they build, how fast they learn, how fast they adapt. You are in control of these things. And that makes you the creator of your own reality and a co-creator in the universal game. And again, you can't ever really get anything wrong because whatever you deem as a failure or that you deem as getting wrong is simply you learning something, right? It's a lesson, and that lesson can be empowering for you. And it can be something that you needed to learn in order to go on and teach it to somebody else, right? It might be something you chose to get wrong or that you needed to experience multiple ways, multiple times. And this is why I'm a proponent of shame and blame. Just reinfects the cycle. It just digs it deeper. It just makes it more programmed in your psyche. And so we don't ever want to go down the shame and blame route. And I've been very carefully walking that edge as I walk around this deep hole that's filled with guilt over the potential of me being able to save my father and getting him on a transplant list. Now, I will say in my own defense, my maiden name is Homan. Homan family are stubborn people. We are some of my aunts and uncles, my cousins, my grandparents, stubborn as they come. We are stubborn people. So it might have been something that tore my father and I apart. Who knows, right? I don't know because I haven't taken the time yet to peek into that timeline. And that's something that we can do, right? We can peek into timelines, especially when we're preparing to make a decision. Because right, when you make a decision, when you're needing to make a decision, you're sitting at a crossroads. It's this path or this path. And because there's two paths, and because there's two decisions, immediately there's two timelines. Well, what if you had the ability to sneak peek into both timelines to see which one is better for you? And there are documented cases in the study work that I'm doing with this mentor where people have done that. A woman was going to take a flight for grad school or something like that to I don't remember, France, UK, England, somewhere across the pond. And she looked in to that timeline, and that flight crashed and everyone on it died. And she chose in that moment to change her flight to another day and time. Well, that flight that she would have been on did crash, and 240 people died leaving New York. She would have been 241. And so she saved her own life by choosing to take a peek at what her decision, right? What that decision was. Now, we can also do this with the process that I teach of learning how to read your body and asking yourself, is this the right choice? And what does that your body response give you? Because your body is connected. It is an antenna, right? It is a vessel. It is connected to your higher self and to your oversoul. So when you tune into the ultimate truth of, is this something that's in my alignment? That's what's going to tell you. And if it is something that's in your highest good, it is in your alignment, and it's something that you walk, and then it's not a good experience, right? You failed, or you had a lesson, or you had a heartbreak. We also have to keep in mind that that might have been a part of the plan all along. Okay. So I don't tell you this to invoke any type of fear. It's to empower you that you can be in more of control of your destiny than you think when you start to use quantum physics and quantum mechanics to your advantage and learn how to use them. And so my goal is to make it as simple as possible, because this stuff is not easy to understand when it's the way that it's always taught. Quantum physics, quantum mechanics is not easy. It's very esoteric in nature. There are very scientific aspects of it, but we can make it more human and simple. And that's why there's so many people that teach it so many different ways, and why it's important that you go to the person that you resonate with, because these techniques have been around for thousands of years. I mean, Einstein, had many theories on time travel. And Einstein and Tesla have had multiple theories that the government and powers that be don't want us to have access to. And we can now understand why some of them went crazy, because this again can invoke in the brain a state of psychosis. And so it is something that you want to learn about, and it is something that you want to navigate. And so I'm going down that road in a deeper level than I've gone in before for myself. But ultimately, you guys know that whatever I do and learn and teach for myself, I end up teaching to you guys as well. So that's something to look forward to. But I am going to take some time and sit with what that timeline potentially could have looked like in a way to bring closure to myself, and to just see and to know at the same time that there is a reality. And I already know this, but there is a reality that my dad is still alive, right? And even that my grandma is still alive. And so I can cherish that and know that that is happening somewhere. This isn't a new thing for me, though. This is something that I've been doing for quite some time. It actually started when I was doing parts work, because when you're doing parts work, you're recognizing aspects of yourself, which is a little bit different than parallel lives or a parallel selves. That's something that I will dive into in my teachings when I do teach the course. But it is working with aspects of yourself and going into their reality. So this is kind of where this started for me. I've always known that the guides that I work with, like my Andromedan self, my Arcturian self, my Pleiadian self, these are main guides I have. Those are versions of me in other time-space realities. This is something that I channeled years and years ago. And so that's kind of what started it. And then I went a little deeper by going backwards, or we would say into the past, and working with my fragmented self to bring myself more into a space of wholeness and integrate my wounds more. And then I started really working with creating my reality, with reprogramming my brain and choosing to embody the timeline and the version of you that exists on it. And this is something that I been working on. And I started with the reprogramming piece earlier this year, which changed my trajectory. It changed the location of where I am. Like, it really shifted a lot of things for me, because the more I started to embody the mindset, the beliefs, the things that that version of me would do, it changes things, right? New things show up because now you're on a new path. And so you have to go in a new direction, and that opens up new opportunities. So this is something that I've been working for and with for a while, but I felt like there was some missing pieces and some further study I could do that could make things a little bit easier to navigate and easier to do. And so that's my goal in learning these things. And again, it's for myself, right? Because there is a version of me that has all of the things that I'm desiring, and that feels the feelings of what all those desires provided. And I can start to align myself to that version of me and that timeline and that parallel reality. And it doesn't happen overnight, which is the misconception that a lot of people get when they think about quantum leaping or quantum jumping. It's a misconception that you do this meditation or you do this thing and then boom, you're there. And that's not the case. There is a reprogramming, a recalibration that needs to happen. And that's going to be the name of my new program. It's going to be the recalibration experience, because that's currently what I'm doing and have been doing, is learning and experiencing what it means to recalibrate yourself to the version of you that has the life and the feelings. It has everything that you're desiring, and it is the version of you that you are desiring to be. And so this is something that I'm super excited. I'm super excited about, and something that you guys can look forward to if that's something that calls to you. But other ways this has shown up for me is I am somebody who travels very easily between dimensions, between timelines. I've always kind of been able to do that. And even in my dream state, I've talked about this a little bit too. I've had experiences and have discerned when something is what we would call a past life, or what I could label or discern to be a parallel life, or timeline. And there's certain lenses in which I view or see through that indicate to me. So for me, one of my dictionaries, one of my telltale signs is if it's something that is quote unquote a past life, which means to me it's just another lifetime that I'm currently living. It is in a rust tint. It means, like, think about putting on rose-colored glasses. Everything looks kind of pinkish, right? Rose-colored. It's like if you put on rust-colored glasses, everything is tinted in that. And usually I will go to those timelines or lifetimes when there's something that I learned in that lifetime that will help me and applies to this lifetime. That's the only time I usually do that. And this is why I'm a big proponent of saying you don't need to do past life regression. You don't need to go to past life readings. But if you choose to, or if you're in a session with me, that can sometimes come up. It's because it applies. It means you've already learned something, and now we're in a situation where we can access that wisdom, and you can choose, if you choose to apply it to this timeline to help navigate you forward. And this is something that I've done in dream states, and sometimes in meditative states, often for years. The other one, again, is how I see parallel timelines, and knowing that that is basically a version of me that has made different choices. So it's another version of me now, but slightly different. And again, I talked about this in the last episode. This is kind of like the Mandela effect, right? You shift frequencies a little bit, you shift to another version of you. It's not really another version of you, it's another world and another version of you, right? So it's both. But on that one, there's going to be things that are slightly different, but you will hold the remembrance, especially if you're self-aware enough and you've started to open your mind, to that multidimensionality. And most people don't even realize that they're doing this, but this is the Mandela effect is a sign of that, is that you hold the remembrance of the way it used to be or the other timeline. And sometimes this can happen when you make decisions, have boundaries, or make decisions or end relationships, and you choose something that's in alignment for you. It places you in another timeline, which is another reality. And that person that you were dealing with, it's like you never see them again. They probably don't exist in your new reality. And then we can use them for experimental purposes, again, to, like I said in the beginning, to look at decisions we're going to make, to help us navigate and choose our highest destiny, our ultimate path, right? Our highest path potential for us. And we can utilize this to feel certain things or to have different experiences that might help us to understand ourselves better. One of those things was, for me, was having the feeling of going home, being home. As a child, I never felt like I belonged here. I feel like this is a telltale sign of somebody that was seeded here, which is what a true star seed is. Everybody's a star seed, but there were certain people who were seeded to help humanity. And I know I was one of those people. It doesn't make me better than anybody else. I just know that that's something I chose. But that's a tell sign right there, is somebody who never really feels at home here on Earth. And I was one of those people. I remember as a little girl, I was obsessed with the moon. I was obsessed with space. I wanted to be an astronaut. I wanted to go to space. Those types of things felt more home to me than anywhere else. And I always struggled with that feeling. And I remember in, gosh, what year was this? 2008. I went to Kauai for the first time on my honeymoon to my second marriage. And I remember landing in Kauai and having this feeling of home. It was the first time I remember feeling home ever. And that feeling was something that is extremely hard for me to articulate, other than you just feel like I belong here. I fit here. I'm relaxed here. I feel confident here. This is my people. This is my place. Like, you just feel like, this is where I'm meant to land. It's like the puzzle exists, and when you get there, you're that missing piece. That's the best way I can articulate it. And in 2017, I was really craving that feeling of home. And I was in North Carolina, and I went into a meditative experience, and I asked to be taken home. And I remember when I dropped in, I began to see this big, beautiful, lush forest with like these huge grass blades, these huge trees. There were rainbows everywhere, crystal clear streams and waterfalls. There were giant mushrooms that you could like bounce on like trampolines. And I was flying, riding on a giant butterfly. And that's how things were. Giant dragonflies, giant bees, giant butterflies, giant spiders. This is the opposite of here. And interestingly enough, I've channeled many times that the earth is inverted, meaning everything is opposite here of what it actually is. So when I had my ayahuasca experience, I experienced very viscerally and visually the truth of things. So the teddy bear I was holding was very small, but when I looked at it, it was gigantic. The shamans that I was working with in that ayahuasca ceremony were not 5 and 6 feet tall. They were 8 and 10 feet tall, and they looked more in an avatar form, meaning like if you've seen the movie Avatar, they looked more like that. They still looked very human, but they were gigantic and more in an avatar style form. Everything was, I saw I saw it for its truth. So anyway, I'm taken into this space and I'm flying on this butterfly and I'm diving in and out of these waterfalls and these streams and I just remember feeling this energy of freedom and bliss and peace, and I didn't want to leave. Everything was so beautiful and so fragrant and so vivid in color and so real. That has never left me. Like that memory has never left me. And so this space was called Zenith. And I have gone down every rabbit hole that I can to see if there's any information on Zenith. And the only thing I come up with is like a video game that does have similarities to what I saw. And we know by now, most of us should know at least by now, that a lot of times the movies that we see in video games are based upon channeled information. It's not somebody who's just super creative. It's based upon channeled information of other worlds, other realities, other existence, real technology. So a lot of the things that we see that we think are supernatural or, sci-fi are real. It's real. I can't find anything on Zenith. But I know that if you look up what Zenith means, Zenith is a celestial point, and it is a space of observation where you're observing the reality, right? But it's at a celestial point, which I thought was interesting as well, how we have articulated that, because this was a very celestial place, and it was the most amazing thing ever. There were Pegasus, there were all these different things, and everything was just perfect and beautiful. And so it begs the question of what is really home, because I have an Andromedan background. I am more Andromedan than I am anything else, but I am also Arcturian. I'm also Pleiadian. Pleiadian version of me was the first one basically to greet me and was the first collective that I channeled. And when we understand how Earth was created by the Andromedans and the 12th dimensional fairies. And Earth is a very beautiful place. It is a resource planet. It is one that was meant to be lush in nature. And while the humans have kind of manipulated and destroyed a lot of that, there is still a lot that exists that is beautiful and lush and tropical, and very much like that. Hence, when I landed in Kauai, it's the garden state, garden island. It is one of the most lush places. It rains 365 days a year. And is one of the most beautiful places you will ever see in your life, in my opinion. It's a place like no other. And so it explains why I felt like it was home. But again, it begs the question, what is home really? Because is home on Andromeda, right? Is home on Sirius? Is home in the Pleiades? Is home in Arcturus? Is home here on Earth? It's not. Home is where you are. You've heard the saying, home is where the heart is. Well, the heart is where your soul enters and exits. It is a soul point. So home is where you are. And when I mean that, I mean where your soul is currently experiencing. And while your soul is fragmented, this is where it gets complicated. While your soul is fragmented amongst infinite possibilities, there's going to be an awareness shift, right? So where your awareness is and where you are is where home is. And you are the one that gets to decorate and choose how you experience this. And this is why they say you create your reality by your response or reaction. And that's also why the guides say that free will is basically how you decorate things. how you choose to perceive them. Because you already have so much that's laid in stone, that's a blueprint of things that you need to or choosing to experience. But how you experience them is your choice. The lens in which you perceive it through is your choice and is your free will. But there's also a saying in the scientific, community, in the quantum physics world, that the future is plastic, meaning that plastic can be melted down and reformed, right? You can recycle plastic. You can reuse plastic. And I believe that that is a sign of alchemy and how you can use your current reality and choose to take those pieces and create something different with it. Change how you experience something, which ultimately changes your reality. And so having this experience was amazing, and something that will never leave me. Also reaffirms the fact why nature is so healing for me, why I have such a connection to fairies, and why, just literally hiking in the woods or hugging a tree or connecting to a tree or laying on the grass or being in or near water, why all of those things have a traumatic healing effect on me, because it reminds me and reconnects me to my soul almost instantly. So this was just a really amazing experience, an interesting conversation that I thought I would share with you guys, because I'm knee deep in this, waist deep actually in this, in learning and experiencing for myself, and really working with my ability to perceive and realize that how I perceive is how I will create things to be, right? That saying again, that is just not leaving me, that we don't perceive things for how they are, meaning we don't see them in their truth. We perceive things as how we are, and we can change how we perceive things. We can change our perception. That is 100% in our control. And so I'm going to leave you guys with that. And I will see you in the next episode.
Hey, thanks for listening. This episode was brought to you by JohannaBurkhardt.com, where it's time to defy the limits of your mind and step into your multidimensional mastery. Don't forget to subscribe so that you never miss an episode. See you next time.